Story 1. Do not ask anyone for help, no matter how hard things get. Story 2. If someone treats a simple question like a deposition, it usually indicates their every choice was interrogated during childhood. Story 3. They are unfazed by things that would normally shock or upset people. Story 4. They become unnaturally good at reading a room. Growing up, they had to scan for danger before it started. It's not intuition. It's survival instinct dressed up as empathy. Story 5. People who speak loudly can be unsettling. Sudden noises, even small ones, can make you startle. Story 6. They are hypervigilant, have difficulty opening up, and are often apologetic. Story 7. I notice many people call those with troubled childhoods untrustworthy. I want to challenge that view. People who experienced a troubled childhood or parental issues are often overly trusting. They try to fill an emotional void by seeking the love and care they missed as children. It is very sad. They let others walk all over them, struggle to set boundaries, and mistake surface-level kindness for deep care, which leads them into harmful relationships. Story 8. All of these answers are listed here. I know I had a horrific childhood. Story 9. Addicted to toxic relationships, people-pleasing, and trying to save others. Story 10. These threads always push the more positive outcomes to the top, and it annoys me greatly. Many of us who grew up rough unfortunately convey the same energy that was directed at us. I will fully admit that I am quick to anger and can be really brash when I am upset. I am not a physically violent person now. When I was a kid, I did break a lot of things. The sad reality is that many people who grew up rough are physically violent, and these threads never acknowledge that reality. Story 11. Need for control. Intense mood swings when feeling trapped, often triggered by seemingly small things. Excessive apologizing, including apologizing after talking. Self-hatred and self-doubt. Source. I have these and had a rocky childhood at best. Story 12. Saying thank you 5 or more times for simple things, like when someone gives you half a soda, because a nagging feeling that you are ungrateful is drilled into your head. Story 13. When they apologize excessively for things that do not require it, it shows how much they had to maintain peace while growing up. Story 14. Being able to identify a parent's mood purely by the sound of their footsteps is a terrible, unwanted superpower. Story 15. Have you ever heard the question, did you have a happy childhood? Or are you funny? Story 16. They do not talk about their childhood and are not in touch with their immediate family. Story 17. Everyone is different. Some people have difficulty trusting and difficulty taking up space, but may also have heightened empathy and an ability to think outside the box. Story 18. Taking up as little space as possible or hanging toward the back or edges of friends and family groups. Story 19. Misanthropy. Always expecting the worst of other people. Story 20. I do not make friends. People do not get close to me. I move silently. You do not hear me coming. I can hear you and know who you are by the sounds you make before I see you. I will help you, but I have a hard time accepting help. I read the room and make sure my children are safe. I know where they are and who they are with. My husband has a close relationship with his family. I keep everyone at a certain distance. Story 21. This thread really messed me up. I relate to many things here, but I am doing my best. Story 22. That spidey sense when an adult's mood is about to shift. You could feel the phrase, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed coming from 3 rooms away. Story 23. They are very guarded about discussing their life, especially their childhood. They have intimacy issues and often withdraw when people get close. Story 24. When they close the door, it is completely silent because they gently twist the doorknob so the latch does not hit the frame. The key is whether it is done absent-mindedly, as if they are not even looking at the door, and this is how they normally close doors. They either sneaked out or wandered around a lot as children, perhaps to get away or to play, or they were not allowed to make noise. Story 25. Not being overly upset when someone or something important leaves or is taken away is a terrible form of punishment. We are used to it. You learn not to react or become attached. Story 26. They keep hurting themselves in small ways because they think that's all they deserve. Story 27. You can do your best, even be the best at something, and still feel it is not enough and that you can do better. Story 28. Always seeming happy on the outside, they were constantly told that expressing negative emotions made them impossible, difficult, or too sensitive, and that they were making their parents' or siblings' lives miserable. As a result, they learned to hide all negativity and be happy and easygoing. Story 29. I have a reflex to immediately try to mediate any argument. My brain sees two people raising their voices and instantly goes into hostage negotiator mode. It is exhausting. Story 30. Predicting people's next moves and studying their habits. Story 31. An extreme need for privacy, whether physical, emotional, or both. Difficulty forming emotional connections with sexual partners. Story 32. Looking at my siblings and me, I see people pleasing, over-explaining, estrangement or difficult relationships with parents and siblings, anxiety, gaslighting and stonewalling, depression, and focusing on solving others' problems while ignoring our own. No one in my family has all of these, but my siblings and I each have at least two. Story 33. I used to casually share childhood stories that shocked or bothered others. I am autistic, so it took me a long time to realize I needed to stop sharing those details. People have told me more than once that I should write a book, but I worry it would be hard to believe that all of those things happened to a single person who is 36 years old. Now I generally only share such details when discussing trauma. Story 34. Give someone a simple compliment, and you can see their brain short-circuit as they try to figure out the angle. It is just a nice shirt. I am not trying to harvest your organs. Story 35. Has angry outbursts. Feels threatened by innocuous things, such as someone ringing the doorbell. Cannot maintain friendships or relationships. Story 36. They eat uncomfortably fast. You can tell they grew up with a you snooze, you lose policy at the dinner table, whether because of siblings or scarcity. Story 37. Hoarding food or eating rapidly. Withdrawing in high-stress situations such as altercations. Story 38. I apologize for everything, no matter how small, even if it is not my fault. All my partners dislike it and become angry. Story 39. Turn the doorknob when closing the door, so it makes little or no sound. Walk softly so you are not noticed. Story 40. Very good at lying about things for no reason, without even realizing they are doing it. Story 41. When someone apologizes for literally existing, saying, I'm sorry for needing oxygen. I did not mean to take up atoms in your general vicinity. Story 42. Impending anxiety about everything. Normalizing the abuse and being shocked when other families were different and healthy. Story 43. An overwhelming need to fix things and make people happy. A chronic people pleaser. Story 44. Some people vaguely remember their childhood, while others do not remember it at all. I do not know the reason, but it seems my memory only began in my early teenage years. Story 45. I see a lot of myself in these comments. Hyper-independence, latching onto others, and not trusting others when that fails. It was all over the place. The best thing that happened to me was meeting two women who were very clear about boundaries up front but could also recognize my talents. Our relationship was built on reciprocity and on our respective strengths. I still had to learn to socialize, but I finally had role models. Now that I think about it, their strength was that they served as role models for me. Story 46. Unhealed, reactive rage toward others. Belligerent, unprovoked behavior in public. Road rage. Story 47. They feel more comfortable around people who mistreat or use them than around people who treat them well and are generally well-adjusted. Story 48. I realized I hoarded snacks as an adult because I experienced food insecurity as a child. Story 49. Their eyes go vacant after someone screams at them, or a sudden movement, such as raising an arm, triggers a fight or flight response. Story 50. They do not ask or expect anything for themselves because they were conditioned to always be there for everyone else. This means they dislike attention, are more introverted, and prefer not to ask for help. When they do ask for help, They truly need it and feel a strong obligation to repay, even when reassured that it is not necessary. Story 51. 1. Over-apologizing. 2. Difficulty accepting compliments. 3. Feeling guilty for resting. 4. Minimizing their own pain. 5. Being hyper-aware. 6. Feeling responsible for the feelings of others. 7. Struggling to identify their own emotions. 8. Avoiding conflict at all costs. 9. Laughing off serious things. 10. Choosing words carefully. 11. Hesitating before speaking. 12. Difficulty expressing needs. 13. Feeling unworthy of love or help. 14. Attracting emotionally unavailable people. 15. People pleasing. 16. Pulling away when things get too good. 17. Becoming a fixer. 18. Perfectionism. 19. Needing control. 20. Being overly independent. 21. Struggling with authority. 22. Being in survival mode. 23. Deep fear of abandonment. 24. Emotional numbness. 25. Constant self-criticism. 26. Feeling different or misunderstood. 27. Struggling to trust good intentions. 28. Strong empathy for the pain of others. Story 52. Dark humor sometimes saved me from dwelling on how bad things were. It helped me rise above and look back with dark humor. I'm not saying it's healthy. It just saved my sanity as a kid. Story 53. Does not trust people. Speaks in a low voice. Is afraid of opening up. Experiences social anxiety. Says I am sorry frequently. Their voice breaks when stressed. Story 54. He was often very defensive, even about minor things. For many years, my husband's first response to a simple question was immediate defensiveness. If I asked, "Have you seen my keys?" he would answer, "I did not do anything with them," instead of saying, "No, I have not seen them today." He grew up in a household where gaslighting and physical abuse were common, and he was blamed for things beyond his control as a child. Another example was extreme eating habits. He grew up with food insecurity, so he would often eat quickly during a meal and refuse to let anything go to waste, as if he did not know when his next meal would be. He has been through many years of therapy to address the damage, and I am very proud of him. It may sound corny, but I want him to heal his inner child and feel safe. Story 55. I generally walk very quietly. I had to sneak through the house and hide my footsteps. Now people jump when I enter a room because they do not know I am there. Story 56. Knowing the sound of someone's steps. Apologizing for small things. Being eager to help and thriving on praise. Consistently checking in on someone's mood. Story 57. Saying I'm sorry for everything or feeling guilty when people help with the simplest things. Story 58. An unrelenting need to control everything and everyone around them. Story 59. I dated a guy who was very relaxed. His roommate and I were chatting about a stressful topic. I can't remember what he said, but I asked him, "Were you ever yelled at growing up?" His response was so stress-free and logical. It turned out he had not been yelled at. Punishments usually involved grounding. Story 60. Low expectations and no personal goals. Avoids eye contact in public. Repeatedly apologizes. Reads the room before commenting or taking action. Low self-esteem. Has few friends and experiences social isolation. Is easily startled. Has chronic illness without a clear diagnosis. Experiences stomach issues. Finds it hard to say no. Has little to no self-care or self-love. Story 61. I am overly silent and very closed up about expressing emotions. That's at least my problem. It feels like childhood trauma from bullying created some kind of emotional singularity, trapping everything in an infinite void. Sometimes, if too much pressure builds, I become unstable with anger, anxiety, and sadness. I always picture it as a black hole consuming too much matter, with violet jets shooting away. Story 62. When a person apologizes even for something that is not their fault at all. Story 63. My husband had a hard childhood. He struggles a lot with indecisiveness. He is so scared to make the wrong decision and is constantly second-guessing himself. I always wonder why. Story 64. An absolute inability to take responsibility for mistakes usually means they were never safe to make mistakes while growing up. Story 65. What looks like distractibility, poor focus, inattention, or a hard time relaxing is really hypervigilance. They have been in survival mode for so long that it is hard to turn off that overdrive. My husband also hyperfocuses on a lot of future-oriented, aspirational projects because he has been conditioned to the belief that now sucks. Save yourself, plan for the future. He has difficulty accepting stability and tends to interpret even the slightest calm as a coming storm. He displays extraordinary self-sufficiency. There are many signs. I will never forgive his parents. They are both alive, and he still tries to win their approval. I hate them with a passion for who they are and how selfish they remain. Story 66. Disproportionate physical or emotional reaction, such as flinching or panic, to loud noises or something bumping the back of their head or body. Story 67. Someone who apologizes for things that are not even their fault. Story 68. You never talk about your parents or anything that happened at home. Story 69. They are the happiest abuse sponge or punching bag you have ever met. Story 70. Excessive apologizing and flinching at loud, sudden noises or movements. Story 71. If they are hyper-independent, it means that when they asked for help as children they were often rejected and learned never to ask. Story 72. Extremely emotionally strong, considered mature from a young age. All thanks to a sibling with a personality disorder. Sigh. Story 73. They create bots on Reddit and use them to farm karma by reposting the same content repeatedly. Story 74. They are often automatically defensive about many things. They struggle with irritation and other signs of poor mood regulation. There is sometimes a lack of good manners and basic respect for others. They may show less empathy than people who had healthier childhoods. Asking for help is very uncomfortable, and they often refuse or feel offended when someone offers assistance. Story 75. They tend to be less judgmental and more open-minded. Story 76. They lived with their grandmother from an early age. Story 77. They struggle to trust, even when no one has given them a reason not to. Story 78. They are constantly going through a lot but choose to hide it because of trust issues, and they are only willing to let two people know what is happening in their life. Story 79. Flinching or instinctively blocking an expected hit when someone moves their hands too quickly. Story 80. Wait, I thought I had a good childhood. I do a lot of these. Thanks for nothing, Mom and Dad. Story 81. Odd habits that seem quirky at first but hide seriously dark adaptive behaviors. I am 55 years old. I still sleep in my clothes, either what I wore that day or a more comfortable version of street clothes, because you never know when you will have to bolt in the middle of the night. I did not break the habit of carrying a purse big enough to hold overnight items until the pandemic. I cannot stand being in a room with a closed door. Story 82. When they want to argue but the words will not come out. The thought stays inside their head. Story 83. My late boyfriend never understood why I would shut down emotionally during arguments or say sorry repeatedly over something trivial, like forgetting a small detail. Returning home to live with my parents made me realize that, as a child, I learned to placate my mother. She could be verbally and sometimes physically abusive when I did not do what she wanted, forgot something, or for any reason. Story 84. This is going to be horribly depressing. They will wear far too many clothes for the weather or far too few. I worked with many children who experienced sexual assault. Story 85. I have lasting mental scars from childhood abuse. Story 86. People-pleasing, apologizing for everything, an insane ability to read the room, and a wicked sense of humor. Story 87. Hyperindependence stemming from having no one to rely on but themselves. They pick at their skin, display aloof behavior, and feel as if they are walking on eggshells. Story 88. Some people can spot a narcissist or an awful person from a mile away, even without knowing them well, especially when they are young. Growing up with a narcissist and an all-round awful father made spotting such people in the wild almost a skill. Story 89. Les cuesta mucho decir que no. A veces los lugares públicos están de más. Son sensibles y raramente piden ayuda. Story 90. They are a dependent parent to their child. In their defense, they come from a poor area and were terribly neglected and put down. Story 91. I flinch away from touch and do not understand why people like hugs. Story 92. When I'm out and about or by myself, I sit with my back to the wall. I am aware of where people are. My eyes constantly scan my surroundings. I need help with some things now because I am disabled. My new partner is the best. If I need a wheelchair, that is not a problem. If I am using my cane, he holds my other hand to make sure I do not trip or fall. He catches me if I fall and helps with many things when he thinks I need assistance. It is still very hard for me to ask. Doctors think my brutal childhood broke something in me and may have contributed to my strokes. I had a stroke, learned to walk again, and my left side is weak. I am working on getting better. I prefer to be alone a lot. I am okay being alone because there is no one to hurt me. Story 93. They work well with difficult bosses because they anticipate and manage every tantrum and outburst, compartmentalize the abuse and humiliation, and still deliver. They tune out the awful behavior and focus on getting the job done. Story 94. I think a chaotic personal life that baffles them is usually a good sign. Story 95. I don't think I had a bad childhood, but I relate to many of these. Maybe it's just my nature. I can't really say. Story 96. I think it is best to assume everyone has experienced childhood trauma until you know otherwise. Some people become argumentative or defensive at the first sign of disagreement. They are not used to communicating, finding compromise, or setting boundaries. They also have difficulty saying no when they should. When I make a request, I tell people they can say no, and I try to make clear that my view of them is not conditional. I am always willing to work with others. It is important to me to be non-judgmental, tolerant, and a safe person for others to be around. I set boundaries as needed, but I hold myself responsible and try to be especially kind. This also makes it easier for others to vent or talk to me if they want to. People need people, and I believe we should try to be there for others. Story 97. This question is asked every week. Just do some research and look at the answers. Geez, at this point, it must be karma farming. Story 98. You have done something. They grab your face, stare into your eyes, and try to use you as a magic mirror to scream at someone who has been dead for more than 30 years. Story 99. A coworker cannot take any criticism, talks in the third person, and always tries to one-up others. He is so toxic that stories about him range from funny to downright shocking to just sad. Whenever co-workers gather, the conversation inevitably returns to him. Story 100. Transforming from the loudest and most aggressive person in the room to meek and compliant when someone else starts drinking. Story 101. When someone is going through a hard time, people often say, "I've been through worse." That happened with someone close to me who had a difficult childhood. I immediately cut her off. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.